Hey everyone, welcome back to Easy English Room, your step forward to fluent English. I'm Henry and I'm here with my co-host Emma. How's everything going, Emma?
Hey, Henry. Yeah, I'm doing really well, thanks. And honestly, I hope everyone listening is feeling great too. I've been really looking forward to today's episode. It's such a relatable topic. So go on, tell us how the idea came to you.
Well, actually, it came up quite naturally. Just the other day, I was chatting with a friend back in London. He's been putting in a lot of effort to improve his English, really consistent, really focused. And then he said something that stuck with me. He told me, Henry, I keep learning new words, but somehow I just can't remember them later. And I mean, that really got me thinking. If he's dealing with this, chances are a lot of you are going through the exact same thing as well.
Yeah, that honestly makes so much sense. I mean, we've all been there at some point, right? Learning new vocabulary, feeling confident in the moment, and then later on, it just disappears. It's actually a very common challenge, but at the same time, it's something we can definitely work on. So if you're finding it hard to remember words, well, don't worry, you're in the right place today. Just stay with us.
Exactly. This episode is really for you. And if you're serious about building a stronger vocabulary, then you're going to enjoy what we're sharing today. Go ahead and hit that like button. Join us on this journey. And by the way, don't forget to share this with your friends, because honestly, learning together just makes everything more fun and a lot more effective too.
Yeah, that's so true. And actually, we're about to turn something frustrating, like forgetting words, into something exciting, almost like a little learning adventure. So, get comfortable, relax a bit, because this episode is full of useful ideas that could genuinely change how you learn English in the long run.
I completely agree. And well, let's not wait any longer. Let's just get started. You really don't want to miss this. So Emma, let me ask you something. When you first started learning English in London, was there ever a word that you just couldn't remember, no matter how many times you tried?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There was this one word that always gave me trouble, the word inevitable. I understood it, something that's certain to happen, something you can't avoid. But every time I wanted to use it while speaking, my mind would just go completely blank, and I'd think, wait, what was that word again?
Yeah, I totally get that. It's such an annoying feeling, isn't it? You're right in the middle of a sentence, you know exactly what you want to say, and then suddenly, nothing. Your brain just freezes for a second, and you lose the word. Honestly, I'm sure many of our listeners have experienced that exact moment too.
Absolutely. It happens more often than we think. But the good thing is, there are actually simple ways to deal with this. You can train your brain to remember words better, and that's really what today's episode is about. We're going to explore how to keep those tricky words in your memory for the long term.
Right. So if you've ever felt like new words just slip away too quickly, then stay with us, because we've prepared some really helpful tips that you can start using straight away.
Oh, and before we move on, quick reminder, we've prepared a free PDF for this episode. It includes all the main tips we're going to talk about, so you can follow along more easily or even review everything later at your own pace, especially if you want to actually apply these strategies in your daily learning routine. So yeah, make sure you download it from the link in the description.
All right, now let's get into our first idea. When it comes to remembering words, one of the most powerful things you can do is learn them in context.
That's interesting. Because to be honest, I've noticed the same thing. It's always easier to remember a word when I see it used in a story or hear it in a real conversation, instead of just memorizing it from a list. I mean, lists can help, but they're not always enough.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good point. It's kind of like learning how to cook. You can read a recipe, sure, but when you actually watch someone preparing the dish, step by step, it just makes more sense. And in the same way with vocabulary, when you see a word used naturally, in a sentence, in a film, or even in a podcast, it becomes much easier to remember, because you're not only learning the meaning, you're also understanding how it's used.
Yeah, that's so true. And actually, let me give you an example. I remember learning the word serene while reading a book. There was this scene describing a calm, peaceful lake, and it created such a clear image in my mind that now, whenever I hear the word serene, I immediately picture that moment. And I don't even have to think about the meaning anymore. It just comes naturally.
That's a great example, and it really shows something important. When a word is connected to a story or a visual scene, your brain builds stronger connections, and that makes it much easier to recall later. It's almost like you're giving that word a place to live inside your memory, instead of just leaving it floating around.
Exactly. And that's why activities like reading books, watching films, or listening to podcasts in English are so effective because you're not learning words in isolation. You're seeing them in real situations, used by real people in a natural way.
Yeah, and on top of that, when you learn words this way, you also pick up pronunciation, tone, and context all at the same time. So it's not just about remembering the word itself, it's about understanding how it fits into real communication.
Right. And in a way, that makes the whole learning process feel more enjoyable too, because instead of memorizing, you're experiencing the language, and that experience is what really helps things stay in your mind.
Exactly. And honestly, that small shift in how you learn can make a huge difference over time. So yeah, learning in context is definitely a strategy worth focusing on.
Another thing that really makes a difference, especially if you're thinking about long-term memory, is going back and revisiting the words you've already learned. You really can't just look at a word once and expect it to stay in your mind forever. It doesn't quite work like that. You need to return to it again and again, and each time you do, it becomes a little stronger. And actually, every review helps fix it deeper in your memory, so over time, it starts to feel more natural. Henry, have you ever come across the idea of spaced repetition?
Yeah, I have actually. And honestly, it's such a simple idea, but at the same time, it's incredibly powerful. So basically, the concept is to review a word at gradually increasing intervals. For example, you look at it after 1 day, then maybe 3 days later, then a week after that, and you keep spacing it out like that. And what's interesting is you're reminding your brain right at the moment it's about to forget the word, which, in a way, strengthens the memory every single time.
Exactly. That timing is what makes it so effective. And the good news is there are actually some really helpful apps out there.
Yeah, definitely. Apps like Anki or Quizlet are perfect for this. They actually use spaced repetition systems to organize your learning for you, so they'll remind you exactly when it's time to review a word again. And that way, you don't have to keep track of everything yourself, which makes the whole process much easier. I use them quite regularly, to be honest, and they've really helped me retain vocabulary without feeling overwhelmed.
I love those apps too. Honestly, it's almost like having your own personal language coach right there with you. Something that gently reminds you, hey, it's time to review this word again. And over time, something interesting happens. You start needing those reminders less and less because the words become part of your memory naturally. Now, let's move on to something slightly different, making words personal.
Oh, yeah, that's a really powerful technique.
It really is. One thing that helps me a lot is connecting new vocabulary to my own life, because when a word becomes personal, it's much easier to remember. For example, I once learned the word adventurous, and I connected it to my first solo trip from London. It was such a memorable experience, and now every time I hear that word, I instantly think about that journey, and I never forget what it means.
Yeah, I do something very similar. For me, the word nostalgic always brings back memories of going through old photo albums with my family back in London. So it's not just a word anymore, it's tied to a feeling, to a moment. And when a word connects to your emotions like that, it becomes much easier to remember.
Exactly. It's like giving the word your own personal meaning, something unique that belongs to you. And because of that, your brain holds on to it more strongly. And even if you can't find a personal memory, you can always create something imaginative.
Yeah, like visualizing something funny or unusual.
Right. The more creative or even a bit silly it is, the better it works.
Oh, definitely. I remember learning the word gregarious, which means someone who's very sociable. And I imagined a guy named Greg throwing this massive party in London with loads of people everywhere. And now, every time I hear that word, I immediately think of Greg and that party, and it just sticks.
That's such a great example. And honestly, those kinds of images stay in your mind for a long time. But there's something else that's really important, and that's actually using the words you learn.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Because if you learn a word and then never use it at all, it's very likely to fade away over time. You need to actively bring it into your daily life, whether that's through speaking or even writing. The more you use a word, the stronger your connection to it becomes.
Exactly. It's a bit like building a muscle. If you don't use it, it weakens. But the more you use it, the stronger it gets. So when I learn a new word, I try to include it in conversations as often as I can. And honestly, sometimes I even talk to myself just to practice it.
Yeah, same here. Sometimes I'll focus on one word and make it a goal to use it every day for a week. I might write it in my journal or bring it into casual conversations. And over time, it just becomes part of my vocabulary. And of course, we can't forget about those classic memory techniques.
You mean things like mnemonics and associations?
Exactly. I'm a big fan of those. They're like little shortcuts for your brain.
Yeah, one of my favorites is for the word ubiquitous, which means something that's everywhere. I remember it by thinking ubiquitous, everywhere, like air. It's simple, maybe a bit silly, but I've never forgotten it.
That's brilliant. I used something similar for the word taciturn, which means someone who doesn't talk much. I imagined a quiet turtle who doesn't speak because it's too shy, and now that image just stays with me.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Our brains really love stories and visuals, especially when they're unusual or funny. So if you can turn a word into an image or a little story, it becomes much easier to remember.
Exactly. And another helpful method is learning words in groups. For example, if you learn the word help, you can also learn helpful, helpless, and helper. So instead of learning just one word, you're actually learning several at the same time.
Yeah, that's a really efficient way to do it. Once you understand a root word, you can recognize a whole family of related words, and that means you don't have to memorize everything separately.
Right. And on top of that, it helps you notice patterns in the language. So even when you come across a new word, you can often guess its meaning.
Yeah, it's almost like solving a puzzle. You start seeing how different pieces fit together, and the language becomes clearer.
And finally, one more thing that really helps is learning through your own interests. If you enjoy sports, watch sports content in English. If you love cooking, read recipes or watch cooking videos. When you learn words in a context you already enjoy, it doesn't feel like studying at all.
Yeah, that's so true. Learning becomes much more natural when you're genuinely interested in the topic. For example, I enjoy watching travel shows, so I end up picking up travel-related vocabulary without even realizing it.
Exactly. You're learning while having fun, and that's one of the best ways to remember new words. And of course, repetition is still key.
Yeah, you really can't expect to remember a word just by hearing it once.
Right, so try to make reviewing words a regular part of your daily routine, whether it's a word of the day challenge using apps, or even just practicing on your own.
Exactly. Consistency is what makes the difference. It's what turns a new word into something you can use confidently in real conversations. And the good thing is, it doesn't take hours. Just a few minutes each day can keep everything fresh in your mind.
So that brings us to the end of today's conversation. We really hope you've picked up some useful ideas along the way.
Yeah, definitely. But before we wrap up completely, let's hand things over to Laura for our vocabulary spotlight.
That's right. Laura will guide you through some of the key words, phrases, and expressions from today's episode.
Yeah, she'll break everything down clearly so you can walk away with fresh vocabulary ready to use in your own conversations.
Thanks, Emma and Henry. Hey, everyone. It's great to have you here again. So, let's take a moment now to go over some of the key words and expressions we explored in today's episode. I'll walk you through what they mean and, more importantly, I'll show you how you might actually use them in real-life conversations in a natural way. Let's start with the word hurdle. Hurdle. Hurdle, it basically refers to a challenge or a difficulty that you need to overcome in order to make progress or achieve something. For example, you could say, remembering new vocabulary can be a real hurdle when you're learning English, especially at the beginning. Inevitable. Inevitable means something that is certain to happen, something you simply can't avoid no matter what. For instance, it was inevitable that the storm would lead to flight delays. There was really no way around it. Pumped. Pumped means feeling really excited or full of energy and enthusiasm about something. For example, I'm so pumped for the weekend because I'm planning to go hiking just outside London. Frustrating. Frustrating describes something that causes annoyance or disappointment, especially when you're unable to do something easily. For example, it was quite frustrating trying to learn the guitar without any guidance or support. Struggling. Struggling means finding something difficult to do or having trouble dealing with it. You might say, I've been struggling to remember new vocabulary for my English classes lately. Vanish. Vanish means to disappear suddenly or in a way that's almost mysterious. For example, I was looking for my keys everywhere, but they seemed to vanish into thin air. Mastered. Mastered means having full control or a deep understanding of something. For example, after months of practice and patience, I finally mastered the skill of baking bread. Slip away. Slip away means something gradually disappears or is slowly forgotten over time. For instance, his name completely slipped away right when I was about to introduce him to someone. Spaced repetition. This refers to a technique where you review information at increasing time intervals so that you remember it more effectively. For example, I use spaced repetition to study new vocabulary by reviewing words every few days so they really stay with me. Consistency. Consistency means doing something regularly and steadily over time in order to achieve better results. For example, consistency is absolutely essential when it comes to learning a new language.
Thanks, Laura. That was really helpful, as always. Honestly, you always explain things in such a clear and easy-to-follow way.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Laura. That breakdown really makes a difference, especially when it comes to actually using the words in real conversations.
And just a quick reminder for everyone listening, building your vocabulary step by step is one of the most effective ways to improve your English. You don't have to rush it. Just take it one word at a time, and over time, you'll really notice the progress.
That's so true. It's all about steady improvement and giving yourself the time to grow naturally. So there you have it, some of our best and most practical tips to help you remember new vocabulary more easily, whether it's learning words in context, using techniques like spaced repetition, or even connecting new words to your own experiences. There's definitely a method out there that will work for you.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's important to keep things enjoyable, because the more fun and personal you make your learning process, the more likely those words are going to stay with you.
Exactly. So don't be afraid to experiment a bit. Try different strategies, see what works best for you. And most importantly, make vocabulary learning something you actually look forward to.
And of course, don't forget to download the PDF. We've included all these tips in one place so you can easily go back and review them whenever you need. It's a really useful way to keep everything organized as you continue practicing.
Yeah, it's a great little resource to have on hand, especially if you want to stay consistent.
All right then, that's all for today's episode. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. We really appreciate you being here with us.
Keep practicing, keep learning, and most importantly, keep moving forward, step by step, towards your English goals.
And we'll see you next time, right here on Easy English Room.
Take care and happy learning.
And remember, your progress doesn't stop here. If you'd like to keep improving, go ahead and check out the next video.
Or explore some of the other lessons we've prepared for you. There's always something new to learn, so keep going.